Welcome to The Explainer. Look, today we are going to rescue a very important concept that has, quite honestly, completely lost its meaning in modern education and professional development. We literally hear the word reflection everywhere, don't we? We're told to be reflective practitioners, to reflect on our days, our failures, our successes. But what are we actually supposed to be doing? So let's just dive right in with a deceptively simple question that frustrates educators and learners pretty much everywhere. What does it actually mean to reflect? I mean, we're all told to do it, but almost nobody gives us the roadmap of how. It's kind of just become this catch-all term for daydreaming, keeping a journal, or just casually mulling things over in the shower. And here's the thing. When a word becomes a vague buzzword, it creates four really distinct problems for us. First off, it's completely unclear how systematic reflection is actually any different from just regular, everyday thought. Second, because it's so vaguely defined, it's nearly impossible to assess. Third, without a clear picture of what it is, it loses its ability to be seen and, well, therefore loses its value. And finally, it becomes incredibly difficult to actually research its real-world effects on learning. All right, to actually fix this, we are taking a little trip back to the year 1910 to the foundational work of educational philosopher John Dewey. See, Dewey saw reflection not as some passive stream of consciousness or accidental belief. No way. He saw it as a rigorous, persistent discipline. He defined it as the active, persistent, and careful consideration of any belief in the light of the grounds that support it. It is hard work. So Dewey gave us this incredibly useful rescue plan with four criteria: meaning-making, rigorous inquiry, community support, and essential attitudes. And together, we're going to see how they transform raw reactions into intelligent responses. Okay, let's jump right into criterion one, meaning-making, or the anatomy of an experience. What is absolutely fascinating here is how Dewey treats reflection almost like a biological mechanism. For him, a true experience requires two crucial elements: interaction and continuity. Think of these as the X and Y axes of learning. Interaction happens between you and the environment. Without it, learning is completely sterile. Continuity is what connects your past meaning to your future actions. Without continuity, your learning is just random and disconnected. You absolutely must have both. Now, because of that biological setup, we really have to draw a line between educative and miseducative experiences. Yeah, not all experiences are actually good for us. A miseducative experience actually arrests or distorts our growth. Imagine a child who learns to be a brilliant manipulator. Sure, they are learning, but it leads to a really routine, selfish kind of action. An educative experience, on the other hand, actively broadens our horizon. It takes the data from our environment and pushes us toward constructive, intelligent action. To wrap up this first criterion, keep this powerful Aldous Huxley quote in mind. Experience is not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens to you. The true value of any experience lies entirely in the perception of the relationships and continuities to which it leads. We have to be the ones actively extracting that meaning. Moving right along to criterion two, rigorous inquiry, where reflection becomes almost like a scientific process. Dewey originally had this whole complex six-phase thing, but honestly, we can condense it down into four super actionable steps. First up, presence to the experience, meaning you have to actually perceive what's happening and hold back those spontaneous knee-jerk interpretations. Step two, description, getting enough mental distance to just state the objective facts. Third is analysis. This is where you generate hypotheses and start weaving meaning. And finally, intelligent action or experimentation. You literally have to test your new theory in the real world. This systematic slowing down of our mental leaps is exactly what separates true reflection from just casually mulling things over. All right, criterion three is community support, and exactly why we just can't do this alone. You know, the psychologist Robert Kegan hit the nail on the head when he said that deciding for yourself definitely doesn't mean deciding by yourself. Working in a community gives you this incredible power. It affirms the value of your isolated experiences so you don't just brush them off. It helps you see things newly because, let's face it, other people offer alternative meanings we'd never think of. And practically speaking, it provides the accountability you need to sustain this disciplined inquiry. In fact, studies on pre-service teachers show that using online discussions and shared video analyses absolutely helps them step outside their own isolated viewpoints and completely reevaluate their classroom practices. Which brings us to our fourth criterion, essential attitudes, or emotional discipline. Because look, cognitive discipline is great, but it's just not enough on its own. We need emotional discipline too. Dewey argued, rightly so, that human beings aren't just coldly intellectual calculators. If we let our fears, our ego, or our unchecked desires drive our inquiry, we are only ever going to see the evidence that reinforces what we already want to believe. To fight that, we have to cultivate 4 very specific attitudes: wholeheartedness, directness, open-mindedness, and responsibility. Starting with wholeheartedness. Total, genuine engagement here looks a lot like the I, thou, its framework. Imagine this dynamic nexus. You've got the I, the teacher, the thou, the learner, and the it, the content, and it's all held perfectly within the force field of the context. Without a genuine, no-holds-barred enthusiasm for this entire system, you simply won't have the energy required for the really hard work of reflection. Next up is directness, and this one is super interesting because it's a visual evolution. Directness means an absolute absence of anxiety about oneself. Novices almost always start out trapped in this paralyzing self-absorption, worrying about how they look or if they memorize the material perfectly. But as they grow, they evolve to essentially forgetting oneself, becoming completely absorbed in the environment, and finally, they reach this healthy self-awareness where they can observe their own actions entirely without ego. Until you shed that initial self-absorption, your reflection is pretty much always at risk of being entirely narcissistic. And those last 2 attitudes, they balance each other out perfectly. Open-mindedness is basically hospitality to new ways of seeing things. But, and this is key, it does not mean empty-mindedness. You don't just blindly accept every new idea that walks through the door. You entertain perspectives while recognizing your own limitations. Meanwhile, responsibility is your reality check. It demands that once you formulate a new understanding, you are obligated to actually test it in the real world. You have to act on the meaning you've made. So, bringing this all together, we go from reaction to response, the ultimate transformation. At the end of the day, it all comes down to the stark difference between a reaction and a response. A reaction, that's just an automatic, thoughtless snap of the fingers. It happens when we skip the observation phase entirely and jump straight to a conclusion based on all our existing biases. But a true response, that is an intelligent action. It's built on the rigorous inquiry of observing the facts, it's supported by a community that challenges our blind spots, and it's guided by the emotional discipline to put our egos firmly aside. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on today for your own life and work. Are your daily actions simply automatic routines possessing you? Are you just reacting to your environments? Or are you actively building intelligent actions guided by true, rigorous reflection? Take a moment today to step back, slow down those mental leaps, and turn your very next reaction into a genuine response. Thanks so much for exploring this with me, and keep learning.